Your boys don't need all this space, Margaret announced, dismissively waving at the rooms my 10-year-old twins, Oliver and Noah, had cherished since birth. Cassidy needs a proper study environment for college. The boys can share the guest room downstairs. I stood in the doorway of their bedrooms, fists clenched, as I watched my mother-in-law, Margaret, begin dismantling the rooms that had once been filled with my son's personal treasures, books, science projects, and star maps we spent weekends working on together. My name is Emma Sullivan, and I never imagined I'd be fighting to protect my children's spaces in our own home. Yet, there I was, watching Margaret take over their rooms for her 18-year-old daughter, Cassidy, who'd just been accepted to the local university. The guest room is half the size of their current rooms, I protested. They need space for their homework, their projects. Oh, please, Margaret interrupted, already measuring the walls with a tape measure. Boys their age should be outside playing, not inside with books and science kits. Cassidy is going to medical school. She needs a proper setup. I swallowed my anger. Margaret had moved in 3 months ago after her husband's passing, bringing Cassidy along. My husband James, ever the dutiful son, had insisted they stay with us. But now, it felt less like a favor and more like a hostile takeover. James and I need to discuss this first, I said firmly. These are our children's rooms. James already agreed, Margaret said, her smile smug. He understands the importance of Cassidy's education. After all, she's following in his footsteps, unlike your boys who, she trailed off, her meaning clear. Oliver and Noah were brilliant in their own way. Oliver was reading at a high school level and had won the state science fair twice. Noah, a math prodigy, had taught himself coding, but to Margaret they were just boys who needed to toughen up. The boys will be home soon, I said, glancing at my watch. Please at least let me explain. No time like the present, Margaret said, already pulling books from the shelves. Cassidy needs to set up her study station. The guest room has a bunk bed. The boys will adjust. I watched in horror as she carelessly tossed my son's books into boxes, disregarding their carefully organized collections. When she knocked over Oliver's crystal growing experiment, sending purple crystals scattering across the floor, I snapped. Stop, I commanded, my voice firm. You don't touch anything until I speak with James. Don't be dramatic, Margaret scoffed, but she set down the box she was holding. James knows what's best for this family, she added. He wants Cassidy to have every advantage. And what about his son's advantages? I challenged. Their right to have their own space. Margaret narrowed her eyes. Their own home. Last I checked, James bought this house. What could you have possibly contributed? Her words stung, but I didn't show it. What Margaret didn't know, and what even James didn't fully understand, was how much of this house was mine. I had inherited a sum from my grandmother, which I had quietly invested in the house and insisted on having my name on the deed. Just then, I heard the front door open, followed by the excited voices of my sons. Mom, Oliver called out, you won't believe what we built today. Up here, sweetie, I called back, shooting Margaret a warning look. Wait in the kitchen. I'll be right down. It was too late. I heard the thud of footsteps on the stairs, and moments later, the boys appeared in the doorway, grinning from ear to ear, until they saw the chaos in their rooms. What's happening to our rooms? Noah asked, his voice small. Margaret stood tall, trying to sound authoritative. Boys, we're making some changes. Cassidy needs a proper study space, so you'll be sharing the guest room. It'll be an adventure. I watched as their faces fell. Oliver hugged his robot project closer, while Noah's lip quivered. But my star maps, Oliver whispered, looking at the ceiling where we'd spent months placing the constellations. And my coding corner, Noah added, staring at his dismantled desk. Those childish decorations need to go anyway, Margaret said. Time to grow up. I had never been one for confrontation, but seeing my children's safe spaces being taken from them stirred something in me. Boys, I said calmly, go downstairs for a snack. Nothing is being moved today. Your rooms are staying just as they are. Margaret's face turned red. Now see here. No, I interrupted, my voice steady. You see here. I'm going to my office. When I come back, we'll have a conversation about property ownership and legal rights. And then Margaret will discuss what family really means. I walked to my office, unlocking the bottom drawer of my filing cabinet. Inside, carefully preserved, was the deed to our house. I had kept it here rather than in the joint files, something my grandmother had advised me to do. Her voice echoed in my mind. Always keep something of your own, dear. Protect yourself with your head. When I returned to the boys' rooms, Margaret was on the phone with James. Your wife is being unreasonable. The boys don't need. She stopped when she saw me standing in the doorway, holding the deed. James will be home in 20 minutes, she said smugly. He'll sort this out. Perfect, I said, my voice calm. We can all discuss this together. I spent those 20 minutes helping the boys collect the pieces of Oliver's broken crystals, listening to their excited chatter about their robotics project. I could see the worry in their eyes, but I was proud of how resilient they were. When James arrived, Margaret practically flew down the stairs. I followed, the deed tucked under my arm. Emma, what's this about? James asked, looking tired, his doctor's coat still on. Mom says you're blocking Cassidy's study space arrangement. Study space arrangement? I repeated, my voice controlled. You mean giving away our son's rooms without even discussing it with me? The boys can share, James sighed, running a hand through his hair. Cassidy needs. What about what your sons need? I interrupted. Their books, their projects, their privacy. They're just boys, Margaret added. Cassidy is going to medical school. She needs to take over my children's spaces, I asked, keeping my tone even. James looked between us, torn. Margaret stood behind him, smug as ever. Yes, she said, I believe it's time. I stepped forward, holding the deed firmly in my hand. Let's discuss it properly then, together. As a family. I laid the deed on the coffee table. Let's talk about ownership. Who really owns this house? James frowned. Emma, I bought this house. You know that. No, I replied firmly. We bought this house. More specifically, I opened the deed, pointing to the ownership details. I own 60%. Silence filled the room. Margaret grabbed the document, her face turning red. This must be a mistake. James, did you know about this? James stared at me, realization dawning. Your inheritance, the down payment, I thought it was just a small portion. My grandmother left me enough to buy the house outright, I explained. But I only covered 60% because I wanted us to build this life together. What I didn't expect was for my children's spaces to be given away without my consent. But Cassidy's education, Margaret began, is important, I interrupted. But not more than my son's well-being, not in their own home. Our home, James corrected quietly. I'm sorry, Emma. I should have discussed this with you. Margaret wasn't backing down. This is ridiculous. Those boys are downstairs playing with robots while Cassidy is trying to become a doctor. She needs her own apartment. I cut her off. In fact, I think it's time we talk about your living arrangements too. What? She gasped. James, are you going to let her? Mom, James interrupted. Emma's right. We've been unfair to the boys. Maybe it's time you and Cassidy found your own place. Margaret's face turned purple. After everything I've done for this family, I raised you to be a doctor, supported your career, and this is how you repay me. By standing up for my sons, James corrected. He turned to me, guilt in his eyes. I've been so focused on helping Mom and Cassidy that I forgot my first responsibility is to our boys. I heard movement on the stairs. Oliver and Noah peeked over the banister, their faces a mix of hope and uncertainty. Your rooms are yours, I called up. No one is moving anywhere. Their faces lit up, and they rushed down the stairs, hugging me tightly. Does this mean we can finish our robot? Oliver asked excitedly. And I can keep my coding corner? Noah added. Yes to both, James said, joining the hug. In fact, let's check out that robot. I've been neglecting your projects. As James followed the boys upstairs, their voices filled the house with warmth. I turned to Margaret. She stood rigid, holding the deed like it had personally offended her. You've ruined everything, she hissed. Cassidy's future is hers to build, I replied, just like my son's futures are theirs to build. In their own rooms, in their own home. The next few weeks were unexpected. Margaret and Cassidy found an apartment near the university, their control shattered by my revelation about the house. They moved out on a Saturday morning, Margaret silent, Cassidy glaring at the boys' rooms. You've destroyed this family, Margaret hissed, carrying out the last of her boxes. Don't expect us at Christmas." I almost laughed at her emotional manipulation. Family isn't about taking from each other, Margaret. It's about supporting each other's growth. After they left, the house felt lighter. James spent the afternoon with the boys, rediscovering their interests. I stood in the doorway as Oliver explained his crystal experiments and Noah showed off his coding projects. "That's amazing, Oliver," James said, "and Noah, show me this program." That evening, after the boys were asleep, James and I sat on the back porch with tea. "I had no idea about the house," he said softly. "Why didn't you tell me?" I took a sip of tea, gathering my thoughts. At first, I wanted us to feel equal. Then it just seemed easier to keep it quiet, until now. "Until my mom tried to take over our kids' spaces," he finished, regret in his voice. "I've been blind to how she treats them." "She's your mother," I said gently. "I understand why you tried to help her. But our sons needed you too." A week later, we got a call from Margaret. Cassidy was struggling with medical school and wanted to switch her major to art history, something Margaret considered beneath the family standards. "This is your fault," Margaret accused. "If she had the freedom to choose her own path," I said, "like my boys, how is that a bad thing?" There was a pause, and then Cassidy spoke. "Emma, can I come over sometime?" "To talk?" The next weekend, Cassidy visited. For the first time, she saw her nephews for who they really were. She sat with Oliver as he explained his science project and asked Noah to teach her some basic coding. "I never realized," she admitted. "Mom always made it seem like their interests were silly. But they're really smart, aren't they?" "They are," I said. "And so are you, Cassidy, even if you choose art history over medicine." 2 months later, our home had found a new rhythm. Margaret stayed distant, but Cassidy became a regular visitor. She officially switched her major, with unexpected support from James. "You defended your son's right to be themselves," he told me. "It made me realize I need to do the same for my sister." The twins thrived in their rooms, growing more confident in their pursuits. Oliver's crystal collection expanded, and Noah's coding projects grew more advanced. One evening, as I tucked them in, Oliver asked, "Mom, are you glad you kept the house papers safe?" I smiled. "Very glad. But you know what I'm even more glad about?" "What?" they asked. "That you never have to doubt your place in this home again. Your rooms, your interests, your dreams, they matter." Later, looking at a photo of my grandmother, I realized the true weight of her advice. It wasn't just about property, it was about protecting what matters. James joined me, wrapping his arms around me. "The boys want to show us their new joint project, something about combining crystals and coding." "Let's not keep them waiting," I said. As we went upstairs to our sons' rooms, I silently thanked my grandmother for her wisdom. Her lesson helped me protect not just a house, but a home where every member of our family could flourish exactly as they were meant to be. Thanks for watching. See you again in the next video. Stay stunned.